In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at how we can interact with Tenancy Services New Zealand electronically using RentHQ. So this only applies to New Zealand based users. Now before we start, we should set up our tenant. So we should have the tenant created already, and there's a few things that we should already set. One should be the tenancy start date, the current rent amount on the Rent Changes tab, the bond amount. So you should create that as a extra charge with a description of bond. And on the contact details screen, you should have each of the tenants who you want associated with this bond, and they should have ideally email addresses and mobile phone numbers. So now that all that's set up, we can start lodging our bond. So everything related to tenancy services can be found inside this box here on the bond/deposit tab on the tenant details screen. Now first of all, we have to register with RealMe with Tenancy Services. So I'll choose to register with RealMe. That'll open a new browser window. Now if I don't have a RealMe account, I can choose to create one, but I've already got one, so I'm just going to log in. And that now gives me some instructions which says that I now need to log out of RentHQ. So I need to close RentHQ and restart it again. So I'm going to do that. Go back to RentHQ and I'm going to close it. Okay, I've now restarted my RentHQ again. So I'm going to continue where I left off. I'm going to go back to the tenant details screen, choose that same tenant, go to the bond tab. You notice now that the RealMe button is gone. I only ever need to do that once. So that's now been hidden. So now I'm going to lodge my bond. Before I can lodge my bond, I need to register my landlord. If I'm a property management company, I can just choose to do one registration for the global RentHQ account. I can also choose to do it at a property owner level. So if I'm a landlord and I have multiple owner accounts, I can choose to create a landlord ID for each separate owner. So I'm going to choose to do it at the owner level, and I'm going to push the registered landlord button. Now enter in details here about the landlord. Now RentHQ will try to pre-fill that information as much as possible, and then I just choose submit. So that information has now been sent to Tenancy Services. Now what will happen is eventually Tenancy Services will send us an email back with our landlord ID number. So I can't continue with my bond lodgement until I have my landlord ID number. So now I've got an email from Tenancy Services with the landlord ID number. I can go back in here and I can now enter my number. So the landlord ID number will start with LNL- and then there'll be an 8-digit number. Yours will be different to this. So now I can continue. We enter in details about the property. If I say that I'm renting by the room, I need to specify which room number, but I'm just going to say that I'm renting out a house. So we get the number of bedrooms and the address from the property details screen. Next we have details about the tenancy, the weekly rent amount, the number of people, tenancy start date, and optionally I can choose to specify whether it complies with Healthy Homes or not. Next we need to specify who are the tenants. So this is the contact details that I showed you before on the tenant details screen. It's automatically pulled that through, and if there are any people here that I don't want to be tenants, I can just choose to remove them. And then the information about the bond itself, so the general bond and the pet bond. So I'm going to do 2,000 general bond and let's say 500 pet bond. We also need to specify how much of this bond are we paying right now, because we might pay it in installment, but I'm going to say I'm going to pay the whole amount now. Now I get to choose whether I want to pay by direct credit, which is basically internet banking, or direct debit. I'm going to choose internet banking, direct credit, and I'm going to submit that to Tenancy Services. Okay, so I've got an information back saying that that was lodged successfully, and Tenancy Services will send me an email with instructions on how to make a payment. So down here, once I get the email from Tenancy Services, it will have a lodgement number. and it will have payment instructions, the internet banking details and things like that. So I have my lodgement number. So the lodgement number always starts with LDG something, with an 8-digit number. And I can push this button here to get information about the current status of my lodgement. And we can see up here it's just in draft state. So once I've actually done my payment and I've actually paid Tenancy Services, either by direct credit or direct debit, they'll send me another email with the actual bond number. And the bond number will always start with BN- with an 8-digit number. So this is the one that I have got from Tenancy Services. And I can now get details about the bond. So we can see the bond is active, 2000 general bond, 500 pet bond. So the next option I have is I can top up my bond. So I can choose why am I topping it up. It could just be that I'm adding some general bond, maybe it's an installment, maybe I'm increasing the rent. But let's just say I'm going to add some general bond. And so I'm going to add an additional 500 general bond. And again, I choose whether I'm paying by direct credit or direct debit. So I'll submit that to Tenancy Services, and again they will send me an email with payment instructions. And the last thing I'd probably want to do at some point is do a bond refund. So I'll choose bond refund. So it tells me that I have 2000 general bond and 500 pet bond. So what type of bond do I want to refund? So I might say I want to refund both the general and the pet bond. And I need to specify a reason. It could be the tenancy is ending, or it could just be a partial refund. So I'm just going to do a partial refund. Now if I want to, I can choose to put some bond on hold. And if I do, I have to specify a reason. Next we choose how much bond does the landlord get. So let's say I wanted 300 general bond, and maybe that's because of some rent arrears, and pet bond, let's say I want to keep 100 pet bond, and maybe the reason is because there's been some tenant damage or tenant cleaning or both. Now because I'm doing a refund, I need to specify my bank account number. And I'll just choose next. Now for each tenant, how much bond are they going to get? So let's say this tenant is going to get maybe 200 general bond and 0 pet bond. And maybe this tenant's not going to get anything because we're just doing a partial refund. Now it's important that we have email addresses, because Tenancy Services are going to contact both of these tenants to let them know how much bond refund they're getting, to make sure that they approve of this. So I'm going to choose next. Now this just gives me a summary. So this is the amount that's going to be on hold, this amount going to the landlord, this amount goes to this tenant, this tenant. So we can see that after this refund we're going to have a remaining amount of 1400 general bond and 400 pet bond. So if these numbers are correct, we just submit it to Tenancy Services. And that's it. So that's now been submitted. And Tenancy Services will now contact each of those tenants to confirm that that is what they wanted. So that's it. That's how we interact with Tenancy Services in New Zealand.